Today I would like to turn to another great thinker from early China. His name is Xunzi. Xunzi is someone who very much sees himself as coming out of the thought of Confucius, and yet will certainly take Confucius's ideas into very new and exciting directions. And for us, our interest here will be to again take these ideas seriously. What is Xunzi arguing? Why should we listen to them? And how would, if we do, would we allow them to challenge our most fundamental assumptions? So let's begin with a couple of these assumptions that Xunzi would, I think, question were he to encounter them. So to begin with, we tend to have a strong valuation of nature in lots of different ways, right? So I should be who I naturally am, because by being who I naturally am, that's, as we discussed with Confucius, how I can be sincere and authentic to myself. I should be spontaneous and naturally me. And similarly, I should sort of become a better person too by being natural in a stronger sense, natural in the sense of connecting with the larger natural world. And often we criticize ourselves for either not being who we naturally are or being sort of out of sync with the larger natural world as well. So nature, both within and without, is something we tend to prize. Now, Xunzi, at a certain level, would agree with at least a piece of this. He certainly thinks that understanding nature is important, but he also thinks that one of our goals as humans, indeed one of our duties as humans, is not simply to stick with what we naturally are and with what naturally exists. He would argue something quite strong here. For better or for worse, but potentially for better, which is the important point he wants to make, we as human beings alter the world around us constantly. We alter ourselves, we alter everything around us in terms of immediate situations, and yes, in terms of the larger world as well, we alter it. We do that anyway. But if we don't do it carefully, we are likely to be doing it very poorly. And above all, if we try to stick to what we think is natural, we are in danger of being not only uncultivated human beings, but potentially horrible human beings. So what are we as human beings? Well, luckily, let me say, we have potentials for goodness, but that we'll get to momentarily. But if we don't work on those potentials, what we are as human beings are, at least potentially, very ugly things. We're ugly human beings because we are beings filled with desires. I want X, and I'll try to get X. I am not happy about this, it will make me angry. And we are beings very much driven by these very base desires. And if we don't cultivate those and try to alter those, we are at risk of simply being beings who will play out our worst desires constantly. And above all, if we think we should stick to what we naturally are, what we're sticking to is us at our ugliest, us at least potentially at our worst, us simply narcissistically trying to get things around us for ourselves. What Xunzi, building from Confucius, will argue, on the contrary, is that what we should try to do is actually create a better world. And to do this, what we need is artifice. Instead of prizing nature, he will say, let's prize artifice. Now, that may seem surprising, so let's look at what he means by artifice. To begin with, let's start with the larger natural world. In the larger natural world, yes, it's a wonderful, wonderful world. It has many, many great things. It does not have ethics. Ethics comes from human beings. Morality comes from human beings. We humans, and we alone, are the ones that will generate an ethical order. We are the ones, and we alone, who can create an ethical world. And if we fail to do so, there will be no ethics, and we'll probably create a world anyway, but a very dangerous one. So our goal, according to Xunzi, is to create order. Our goal is to take what we get from nature, what he will call heaven and earth, and build from that. To build from heaven and earth such that we can create a proper world, an ordered world, an ethical world. This is a human artifice. We will not get it from nature. We simply do it ourselves. Now, artifice is still a strong term, so let's look in a little bit more detail at how we develop artifice. The use of such a strong rhetorical term might lead you to think, well, he's thinking of sort of creating an artificial world in a sense of kind of creating some kind of sterile world, some kind of world that would be purely artificial, that would cut out our desires. And sure, that might be moral and it might be ethical, but it's certainly not a world we would want to live in. That's actually not what he means. So he will talk about how we, putatively in the past, but in an ongoing way as well, have and could create morality. And when he talks about it, he does not discuss things like, well, creating a sterile world. He also doesn't talk in terms of thinking through a rationally ethical way of building a proper ethical world, rationally developing ethical precepts for good behavior. A good follower of Confucius in this sense, he would probably say that such precepts wouldn't actually change the way we live our everyday lives. Rather, when he talks about artifice, he talks about something else. He talks about artifice in the sense of, it's an intriguing analogy, the development of pottery. Now, when I say that, you might think, oh, yes, what he must mean is we created an artificial moral world as people originally, say, created pots. And that was some kind of invention that enabled us to hold water, and it's something comparable to that. Actually, that isn't the analogy. The analogy actually is to say the creation of an artificial world of ethics is similar to the very mundane activity of making a pot. The mundane activity, but it's tough, right? I mean, think of what a potter does. A potter is working with natural stuff, like clay, water, and the art, and it's an art, is working with this, training oneself to be able to work with these natural materials, developing something that's artificial in the literal sense that it did not exist in nature, and yet through that art, pulling it together effectively, developing a pot. You're not really creating something new, you're rather generating that newness through the constant training that it takes to learn how to do pottery. And Shunza wants to say, think of ethics the same way. Think of ethics as the kind of training process, a lifelong training process, comparable to what you would do if you're learning to become an outstanding potter. Only with life, what you're doing is you're training yourself to understand the world around you, understand human needs around you, understand how to act well, and that work is the constant work that we would do if we were learning pottery, or, to shift the analogy, learning a musical instrument, learning a sport, but you're applying that same technique of constant work, constant training to everyday life. Your faculties, your abilities to sense situations, sense those around you, training yourself to be good in that very strong sense of the term. In short, Shunza is going to want to argue the following. Ethics is artificial. It's something we work on, we train ourselves to become. It is not something we are naturally given. It is simply something we have the potential to do, but it takes constant work and constant, endless training. And think of your life that way. Think of your life as the constant work and training that it takes to become a decent human being, to become the sort of human being who can respond well and act in ways that will bring out the best in those around us. The self, again, is not something given. It certainly is not something we should simply find within and embrace. It is something we create through our artifice. It is something we try to, over the course of a lifetime, build and construct. It's a very powerful notion of a self, a very powerful notion of how we can become a great human being, and one that, if it does indeed contradict some of our fundamental assumptions, let's take it seriously and see what we can learn from it.